Well, it's actually quite a busy little spot out the back, that bit where the Myers sort of crosses over. But what you have done is consolidate all the buyers onto one property. That's what will happen.
That's right. So they've consolidated themselves into roughly. Probably 2/3 of the size that they were.
So there'll be nothing north of the street?
No, they have an option, I believe, to take up space in the new Emporium section on the what's called the Lonsdale Street.
Because that obviously is being redeveloped as well, that whole site as well. I was interested too, also with that, there's a photo, in fact, that I put on the website of that triangular little battle going on there, and also there's a photo I took on Saturday inside the main atrium space, which is a kind of dynamic raking atrium space.
Yeah.
What's the agenda with that space, and what does it achieve from a retail and urban point of view?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do was to make sure that when people formally entered the building that they were aware of all the other levels. Now, I mean, there's not a retail development in the world that's multi-level that doesn't want to do that. The question is how you do it, and how do you make it generous enough that you can actually see up it. So we came up with this idea of inclining it because we needed to get under the mural hall structure, because the front third of the building is the original building, of course, holding up the mural hall, etc. But we needed it to point to the north, really, to capture as much light as possible. And also one's head and neck doesn't, except in yoga classes, they'll go at 90 degrees. Generally, you have a cone of vision, and when you look up, you sort of see daylight. So to incline it at the angle that it is was to achieve that. And secondly, as it goes up, it actually widens out, so you get a sort of a different perspective view of it. So it sort of brings the roof down in a way, because you don't get the foreshortening you do in a traditional perspective.
But as you mentioned, Stu, what it does do is create this fantastic sort of animation of the space almost, or this sort of because as you go up the escalators which are around
it's hard to pin down what's going on.
Yeah, you kind of this whole the whole thing sort of starts to spin, and the way that it's all got a sort of silvery colour to it, so the light really kind of flickers around it, which is
you're very. I mean, the thing about it, it's even now you're very conscious of what the weather's doing outside when you're in the building, which is not something traditionally retail buildings have done.
And I was going to say, my friend who is a plasterer working for the plastering company that's doing the top floor said this is something to behold. He said you will never have seen anything quite like it.
Yeah. It's certainly tested 3D design, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get at. This is really sort of pushing the kind of where we can get to with three-dimensional computer-aided designers. That's sort of stuff you wouldn't have been able to do before.
No, I think it's safe to say that, except, it's required a lot of cooperation between our guys that have put all this together in a modelling, and then the shop detailers and starting right back from the steelwork fabricators through to the timber fabricators.
And the plaster moulding guys.
The plastic mould, very important people.
It does just being retail space, particularly big box retail, how you kind of make that internal experience kind of better. And I think obviously one strategy you've looked at, not only that, you've got the circulation, which is an opportunity to do something because it's not necessarily covered in product, but also the ceiling is a zone that always suggests itself. And obviously with the bits I saw the other day, the ceiling grid is really an opportunity that you've used. Are there any other bits where you can make your mark in terms of registering design intent outside of those areas?
Well, fortunately, there's been a high degree of cross-fertilisation with all the designers that they've used on the fit-out sections. They've all used the building as a reference point.
Right.
And which has been heartening, and also means that there's a sort of holistic solution. It's not just one thing on the outside and another thing on the inside. The real expression, of course, for us is the interior as you come to the top of the atrium space, and the void the ceiling of that with the timber framing and all of those cornices that your plastering friend has carefully installed.
And Marcus.
Well done, Marcus. And
is that Marcus?
He'll be flush now, so to speak. Anyway, that's it's a really, and it's also ambiguous really where the ceiling starts and the walls begin, and that was very deliberate as well.
Yeah, but I think you're right, Stuart. It is something in retail that's quite often sort of left. It's just this sort of leftover thing. And it's actually it's actually the thing that you see the most.
Yeah, well, in big spaces, you really do need to orientate people and not rely on their ability to. This just means that you have grades of registering how the thing works spatially. One
other retail project, the very big one we mentioned briefly, which is kind of the opposite approach of that, which is you sort of stick all the action on the roof, is the Costco job down in Docklands. The retail doesn't get much bigger than that, does it?
No, it was. I think. Yeah. Well, no. It is. It's a large single entity on one floor, And everything about Costco is big, as you know, and if you shop there, it's in, the first trolley load, then one goes. We've never bought so much toilet paper in our lives, and we're still getting through it. But
you need a big garage, don't you?
You need a big garage, big trolley, big station wagon, and a big credit card. But again, that's been something where we've concentrated on the form of the building, not disturbing the retail performance of it. So the shell the Costco have in there, I mean, it's exactly their formal shell, and the way in which the internals of the store work are exactly as it would be if it was in Seattle or Denver or wherever. So it was really the way in which it's behaved on the street, and that was quite a challenge, obviously.
That sort of Diamond Road. Footscray Road there.
Yeah.
The way it sort of does animate sort of around it again, it's
very graphic.
The movement around it is fantastic.
It's big sort of striping gesture. If you get into near map, you get a really good view.
Well, that near map is is one of our secret aspirations to cover Melbourne with little efforts that are registered on near map. So that we now have the gold roof of Myer,
and you've got Costco and
the little blue roof in the middle of QV as well.
And that's on that colours, obviously something that you're very interested in. It's quite often gets left behind in architecture, or people are scared of it, or clients are scared, or I don't know. But I mean, there's a very sophisticated use of colour on the Little Burke Street side of Myer. So it's quite impressive to see that. But you've also, as you mentioned, I was going to say the blue up at QV, and it's something you're conscious of as a practice.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing because internally we sort of wrestle with each other constantly about why haven't you got a colour? What do you think about colour? Are we going to have a colour theory on this job or not? And it's something that it's worked with us organically. And I suppose to take the Myer thing, the idea of a gold roof and a gold-based facade was that to sort of get the building to shimmer in the middle of the city and then have some sort of reference to packaging and the craft of presenting things, as Japanese product, and the wrapping is often more important.
Gold wrapping paper.
Yeah, well, it's a homage to the way in which you present things, and there's a care and a sort of a respect that's paid by doing that in a crafted way. So that was. And
do you think those things work at different scales? Like you talked about the smaller blue roof at QV and this big gold one, and you've got massive red, black Costco one, and conventional. Do you think these things work at a variety of scales? Like it doesn't change fundamentally when you get into the really big building stakes?
I think, well, I mean, obviously the strategies we've used are sort of similar from place to place, and the scale obviously changes quite dramatically. I mean, even the RSPCA kennels were quite dramatic on the roofscape as well, and the colours and the choice of the material.
But at a sort of reasonable budget too, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't using anything extraordinary as a material, and really not. That it hasn't been the case on any of the projects. We're working in the hardcore realm of commercial architecture. There's no free kicks budget wise in that world.
We are unfortunately, Simon, coming to the end of proceedings.
Can I ask one last question?
As long as it's the last question.
No, well, it's the second last question. I just wanted to ask quickly, and this might take a bit longer to answer than you would like, Stuart. But I just wanted to talk about you're a practice that is really interested in environmental architecture and being green and all those sort of things. And how do you think? I mean, there's this. It seems to me to be this conflict between sort of retail consumption and and sort of having a kind of living a green life or a sustainable sort of life. Do you sort of think that those two things are in conflict, or can they live? Can we keep consuming and live on the planet?
Well, probably not. We probably can't do that. But I suppose what we're really it's a question that can definitely monopolise about a couple of hours of a dinner party conversation with friends at home, and so it's best to just say you're a musician, and avoid that question. But look, I think that in the end, the moral responsibility of what's sold and how it's come into life is one question. We're talking about the buildings and the environment that we're in, and our view is that we try to make the buildings sustainable in all those technical ways, but fundamentally that you build something and that lasts, that it actually has the ability to. We look at old Melbourne, and old Melbourne's been re-inhabited several times and several generations over. So if you build a building decently, it doesn't command the need for reinvestment 10 years after.
So it should be recyclable.
And the effort goes into the actual use that's in there and supporting the uses. And if the uses are viable and morally correct and, can do their job and fulfil and reflect what contemporary thought is in the world world of consumerism, and consumerism, and not all of it's bad. I mean, it's a generalisation.
We should just go very quickly because Stuart's going to get angry otherwise. Who is your favourite?
I don't get him.
We're going to get a Sennheiser up.
He does seem a little bit though. Who's your favourite architect, Roger?
Well, I saw that question. I had to think about it.
Living or dead?
Living, Sauerbruch and Hutton from Germany.
Germany, yes.
Yes, we've actually worked with them.
We work with them on the Melbourne Uni thing, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah, and we visited them quite a few times.
Share the same interest in colour.
Yeah, well, we think they actually have a lot more deliberate and organised way of approaching it than we do.
Sauerkraut and mutton is a friend of mine.
They do know colour well.
Yeah. And the other one is Jan Giel from Copenhagen. And
urban designer.
Urban designer.
Yes,
par excellence.
Roger, it's been an utter pleasure having you on talking about retail in the city. We're going to say thank you to Roger. So thanks, Roger. We should thank Andrew for podcasting. Sorry about some of the podcasting confusion the last few weeks. That is now sorted out. Thank you to Roger Nelson and
especially Roger for supplying the music tonight.
And we're going out with one last track, Roger. This is track number 5 here. One More Chance with You.
And Mars,
Little Walter.
Yeah, and Mars is now open for business. And A Place in the Sun, Stuart's book, is in your bookstores.
I don't know if you can get it.
Go and see both.
You've been listening to a podcast from Australia's best-known community radio station, 3RRR, 102.7 in Melbourne. For more podcasts, information about upcoming events and our live stream, please visit our website at rrr.org.au.